said, I'm Howard Roberts. I work in a bit of the industry that all of you have, but not many of you think about in terms of IT security. I've been in this industry of office print for actually 30 years. 30 years? Really? I actually started in this industry connecting electric typewriters with a serial interface to MS-DOS machines. And now we have fully functional computer-type devices which people use every day, multi-user, connect to every piece of your network. I'm going to talk about the forgotten endpoint in your office, which of course is the office printer. So let's talk about the profile of an HP customer. I'm not here as a selling job. I'm just going to talk to you about how we approach the security of printing devices and the environment in which they're used. We've all seen modern offices, these ones with these funky, bright colors, with beanbags and tables and open workspaces, compared to the little grey cubicles that we all used to work in 5-10 years ago. We work from multiple spaces. I'm based in Manchester, in the UK, but my office is where I work where I am. Whether it's at home, whether it's in customer offices, HP offices, airport lounges on the train, I work where I am. And that's the same with many people around the world as well. The mobility has changed where the workplace is. We also have bring your own device. For example, if you don't like the phone that your company might issue you, you buy one of your own, link it to your company network, and you have your personal and professional data on that device at the same time, so that your organization has to protect the professional data on that device. And then, obviously, we see the increase of the browser as a security tool, the growth of cloud services. Pretty much an entire knowledge worker's job these days can actually be done through the browser working in GApps or in Office 365 through a browser. So that's the space in which we're talking to our customers. But the more things change, the more things stay the same. So let's look at what else we need to do. Our sensitive data still exists on personal devices. Okay, we have encryption, we have TPMs, but the data still exists in multiple places, and it's on our endpoint devices. We're still using network printers. We all hear about the Internet of Things, IoT. I propose to you that the original Internet of Thing, I guess, is the network printer. It's the first bit of equipment, aside from terminals, that was connected to the network because we didn't want to connect through our serial interfaces or our parallel interfaces. And in fact, these days, when we print to a network printer, we often print through an LPD or an LPR interface, port 515, right? That is 40-year-old Unix technology through which you're printing to your network printers. We still find the customers using Windows 7 and Windows XP, unpatched. You all heard about WannaCry. That significantly affected the UK National Health Service for a vulnerability that had been patched for months by Microsoft, and yet it hit these organizations. And we still find organizations using a password as the sole authentication. The number of places I see that have single-factor authentication is unbelievable. So our offices are changing, but we still have our legacy systems that we need, that are in use. So we're also finding that the endpoint is a target. And that's because a lot of the vulnerabilities that we look on servers, SQL exploits, other elements of server-side devices are locked down. Servers are now often virtualized and perform one function, a database server, a mail server, and lots of the ports to that are closed down, giving a smaller attack surface. So attackers are looking at endpoint devices because endpoint devices talk to everything. If we think about our phones, we talk to our banks, we talk to our email, we talk to our social media, we talk to our home automation services. Everything is in there. And that's a problem, because if we think about the wares we have in a device, we've got our hardware, we've got our firmware, and we've got our software. We've got the layer on the top that I like to call wetware. So us bags of bodily fluids, we're the problem. We're the ones who click on links that we shouldn't, who are socially engineered to do things. And therefore, endpoint devices are being attacked way more than server-side devices, which means that choosing an endpoint device is actually a security decision in itself. How can you make sure your device is still usable by wetware, but is as secure as it can be without affecting productivity? So, let's move on to this. Printing. Now, Jamie teed this up earlier. He talked about actually some of the scripts he used for attacking printers. A survey shows that IT decision makers, when asked, what's your level of concern about your devices? And they came back, oh, well, over 90% are concerned about PCs, less about mobile or servers, but still quite high. What do you think the number was for printers? Any idea? Sub 10. Sub 10? Anyone else? 0. That's really pessimistic. It really is. Okay, it's not quite that bad, all right? So 18%. And that's a problem. Let me show you why it's a problem, okay? Can you all just take your mobile phones out? Okay, everyone take out your mobile phone and unlock it for me. Oh, come on. Okay, now, take your mobile phone. Just open WhatsApp or Messenger, whatever you use, Signal, Telegram, whatever. Okay? Right. Now, give it to the person next to you. Yeah. Okay, you won't do it. And you felt worried as soon as I said it. But the fact is, there are unlocked devices on your network. Only 5% of the printers that we come across are secured. And why is it a problem? I'm sure you're aware of Peter Kim and his writing. This is the second edition of the this is the Hacker Playbook 2. Can you guess what the first edition was called? But there's a chapter in here about attacking printers. Now, we're not talking really about printers. We're talking about multifunction devices, because there's no such thing as a printer. The number of times I hear from people, it's just a printer. Oh, it drives me mad. It's not just a printer, because printers now talk to everything. They talk to SharePoint. They talk to Active Directory services. They talk to cloud services. They can run applications on them. They're way, way more than just a printer. But he's got a chapter in his book around that, which is using a printer as a stepping stone into Active Directory. Because if we think about a printer, let's talk about the attack surface. Where's the risk? Here's a modern printer, modern HP printer. Let's look at this on the left. Okay, we've got a data interface. Doesn't matter. It's got network interface. It's got USB. We finally dropped the parallel port. You wouldn't believe how hard it was to actually drop the parallel port, by the way, on our printers. The amount of debate and consternation that caused. USB, there's infrared is still there. No serial interfaces inside there, but the Wi-Fi hotspots in there. So there's many data interfaces. We've got our BIOS and our firmware. By the way, how many of you here have got HP, modern HP printers on your networks? Yeah, about 50%, okay. How many of you updated the firmware on those printers recently? Oh, much less. Okay, you should, because there have been 2 vulnerabilities in the last 6 months that have been responsibly disclosed to HP regarding a remote code execution. One of them including the T30 fax protocol. Anyone know when the T30 fax protocol was introduced? 1999. And it's still being used, and it's still in most Office multifunction printers. And someone recently disclosed a way to actually remotely execute code on HP printers using a TIFF processing unit. Really. But we've got inside our firmware. And then we've got the hard drive, we've got storage. Okay? So that is essentially the components of a server. Okay? So you've got an operating system, you've got firmware, network interface, and storage. Okay? How many of you would allow unsecured servers on your network? None of you. Yet, how many of you have secured your printing devices? Now, let's take this further. Let's talk about how we involve these devices with wetware. So, we've got a control panel where people walk up. Modern printers haven't got this lovely touch interface, swipe, zoom, all this kind of. I think there are 3 universal gestures people understand now, which is one is this, one of them is this, and one of them is this. Everybody knows what they are. And modern devices have those interfaces on them. We have the input tray. I mean, paper is a massive area of data privacy loss, data loss. The input tray, where your stationery is important. In the US, they still print a lot of checks. I can't remember the last time I wrote a check. My kids are at university now. I think the last time I wrote a check was when they were in primary school for their school dinners or something like that. But in the US, they still print checks. That media is really valuable, because if you can steal it, you can print your own checks. The output tray. Every single important data generally is printed at some point or another. Business plans, salary lists. We go around organizations and look at what's been left on the printer at the end of the day. There are employees at lunchtime printing off medical records and loan applications, mortgage applications that they're forgotten to print. They're forgotten to collect on top of their printers. So the input tray and the output tray. And finally, management. In terms of managing these devices, many people do not manage them or don't manage them to the right extent. So if you've got an unmanaged server on your network that you've got perhaps 50 or 60 people all using, I mean, if you lose a single username and password from a laptop, it's probably not that much of a problem. You've got 50 people a day could be using this thing. You could be losing 50 usernames and passwords to your network. What's the odds one of those will be a network administrator? So the attack surface and the number of people using it is often forgotten about. So let's talk about a framework that we can use to secure our printers. This is the one that we use. Other manufacturers do this in different ways, but it's the way that we've put this together to help our customers understand. So we talk about secure the device. Then we talk about securing the data that flows to and from the device. And we're going to talk about securing the document, the actual physical properties of the document, the paper. How do you secure paper? And then finally, we'll talk about the management of this. And I'm going to give you some examples and perhaps some stories that we've found around this. So let's talk about secure the device. One of my favorite stories was actually regarding social engineering. This was about 5-6 years ago. I went to a university in Wales, and a guy, one of the IT guys there, told me a story. He said somebody turned up, and he was wearing a piece of he's wearing a piece of magic clothing, and his magic wand. I said, what do you mean? He said, okay, magic clothing, high visibility vest, right? You wear one of those, you can go anywhere. Magic wand was his clipboard, and he walked in with a lanyard. That no one knows what was on the lanyard. It just looks official if you wear a lanyard, right? And he walked in, and he said to the students, we're changing the photocopiers. They're really heavy. Can you help me push them down the corridor to my van? And we're bringing the new ones in. And he got them to push two high-end enterprise photocopies down the corridor to his van, white van, tail lift, pushed them in and said, guys, thank you very much. You've really saved me a lot of time and effort. I'll see you in half an hour with the new machines. So do you think they ever saw him again? Well, the machines? Of course not. Okay, so securing the device. And by securing the device, we all know Kensington locks. Okay, there can be, there are a reason to make you go and look somewhere else. But equally, Kensington lock will also secure removable parts from the machine, such as the hard disk or the storage or other elements which are removable. So secure the device physically. Secure the firmware. Has anyone seen this video? Anyone seen Doom running on a printer? Really? This isn't an HP machine, by the way. It's a Canon printer, but I'm not picking on Canon. I'm not picking on Canon, because this could be anybody, okay? But this one was documented. You'll find the video out there. It runs an ARM processor, like many IoT devices, and Canon used a poor encryption to secure the firmware. A researcher downloaded the firmware, broke the encryption, replaced the printer firmware with Doom, and ran it on the front panel, just as a point of reference to show that it could be done. But what happens if he didn't? What happened if he'd actually replaced the on-screen keyboard with something that logged every username and password and then sent that off? What happened when they scanned to email? Every single document was sent as a BCC copy to a Gmail or a Hotmail address. Okay, so if you're familiar with HP computing devices, you'll know about the BIOS protection, the way that we whitelist the code that runs in the devices, the intrusion detection that looks at how the CPU behaves, what buffers are using, what storage behaves, the bounds in which this operating system works, and any of those things. If people attack the BIOS, if they try to upload unsigned code and execute unsigned code in the device, or to run additional malware on the device, it's detected by HP Enterprise printer firmware. And so far, we've been pretty successful. advertise yourselves as the world's most secure printers, you put a target on your back. And we've had a couple of attacks on that I talked about, but it hasn't been as bad as some of us actually feared it would be. If you let the marketing department say the world's most secure printers, you go, oh, why did you say that? But we've so far been pretty successful. And we do have the bounty open. There's a bounty open for responsible disclosure for people to attack HP printers. There's a up to a $10,000 bounty for a severe bug in HP printer firmware. It's handled by our general business unit. I don't know how we're going. It's all kept very quiet, and those patches will be rolled into HP firmware. Okay, so protecting the firmware. What else is valuable? People complain about the price of consumables to us all the time. Oh, your ink is the same as champagne. Your toner is, it's like gold dust. Okay? So I'm not even going to talk about that, but that means that those consumables are valuable. A full set of consumables containing 30,000 pages for a color printer can be 600-700 euros. Okay? Now, if you can find a way of getting those consumables out of the device, you do a search on eBay for brand new, unopened HP toner cartridge. There are hundreds of them. How does it happen? So this is actually, this thing you see here, toner low, that wasn't the printer, that was me. I did that. I can force a message to the front panel. And again, social engineering. Oh, this printer's low. I'll just call facilities and we'll get a new cartridge. It's not low, it's still got 80% left. But I know it's coming. I'll intercept it before it gets the printer, and it's on eBay. Okay? So we can lock toner cartridges to the device and to your fleet, so they can't be used. We also find people stealing the toner and the ink from a printer and using it in their machines at home. That happens. In fact, the customer I had the biggest problem with that was actually a police force. What did they say? Set a thief to catch a thief? Okay, and we showed them how to do it. So securing removable and valuable parts from the device as well. And then the final part is storage. Again, you probably can't see that at the back. This is me walking the disk, the storage device in the machine, and that says Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart. It's a point of execution on a customer's device, because we caught in a university, the students were essentially using it as a jukebox, because they'd got an exploit and they were sharing music from the device. Completely, it was not logged at all. So if we think about how attackers will maybe attack an organization, targets the poster child, right, of code running in an organization and then exfiltrated without people knowing about it. I mean, well, we also think about British Airways. I guess you've all heard about that. The sysadmins must be in a meltdown at the moment. But that data was collected and exfiltrated from an insecure server. Why not a printer? You can read and write to the hard disk with no credentials whatsoever, by default. Okay, so secure the device. Let's look at securing the data to and from the device. The biggest risk. How many of you have your printers and your photocopiers in print hubs and you've got the recycling bin right next to it? Yeah? You have. Why does that happen? Because at the end of the day, there's a stack of stuff on the printer that people will actually drop into recycling. That data is really important. Often when we run our security services, we don't do anything with a customer on the first day. At the end of it, we'll collect all the documents, take them to the information security team and say, this is what was left on your printer. And business plans, it's salaries, it's personal data that's left on there. So the most secure document is the one that you don't print. Okay? The next most secure document is the one that you release by yourself. And the default option that many people choose is printing with a pin. Right? You print, enter the pin and your printer driver, and then you go to the printer and walk with it. Walk to the printer, enter your pin, and release the job. Easy. It's sent in a language called PJL, which was designed over 20 years ago as a wrapper around PostScript or PCL, before security was even thought about for network printers, in plain text. What are the odds that the pin that people use is the same one as on their phone, or their car, or their burglar alarm? Probably about 80%, I would guess. So, how do we stop you doing that? Next thing is to use encrypted print. So print encrypted, okay? Dual-factor authentication, so encrypted at source, encrypted in transit, encrypted on a database, an encrypted database with an encrypted job. So it's not even stored on the printer at all. You walk to the printer, you take a badge, MyFair, smart card, doesn't matter, put in dual factor authentication and the PIN, release it, decrypted at the printer. It's a common way of actually managing your prints. Easy to do, it's almost commoditized, those solutions. HP Access Control, SafeCom, PaperCut, all of those solutions do those kind of things, but many people don't implement it. Finally, secure the document. Have you all know about the yellow dots on color printers? Anyone knows about that, yellow dots? Yeah? All enterprise-level color printers have a yellow dot printed on them, which when you shine a green light on it, a blue light on it, will show up green dots, which you can trace back to the serial number on the model of that printer. All of them. And that's how one of the leakers from the NSA was actually caught about a year or so ago. And printers will do that at firmware level, but actually we can also have solutions that will actually mark a document so you can trace back to who and what and where printed it. So you can't stop people from losing the paper, but you can trace back where the leak came from and use that as education for the user. We have other elements that's micro-printing, that you can't even actually see the text. It's printed at 1200 dots per inch, but under magnification, we know who actually printed it. Copy protection. We've even got elements where you can replace the yellow toner with the ultraviolet toner, so when you shine a light on it, it's got markings, invisible markings on it. So we can protect the document, or at least trace back where it came from. And finally, we talked about monitor and manage. There's a great video on the web. I think they ticked all the social media channels in terms of appearing in BuzzFeed. It was a Singapore research team that took a hacked mobile phone on a drone and hung it outside the 35th floor, broadcasting itself as a printer. And people printed to it, typical man in the middle of track because the certificate wasn't signed, and then captured the jobs. Many, many people do not sign the certificates in their printers because it is a pain in the ass to do so. But how do you know you are talking to a printer? We run a piece of software, again, Security Manager, that will actually allow you to take the certificate signing request from your devices, from mass number of devices, rather than 20 minutes per device. It'll do it in one go. It'll talk to your certificate authority, have them signed, and drop back in the printer. There are people who buy the solution from us specifically for that function. That software also locks down stuff like HP printers out of the box, that they are not secured until recently, for many, many reasons, legacy reasons. You can lock them down generally within about 5 and 8 seconds with a policy manager. But they run stuff like Telnet, FTP, they run AppleTalk. That's like 1995 says hello. They still run these kind of things. So you need to be able to have a policy manager that locks these things down, and part of that will be certificate management. It's a completely open attack surface. So I've got just a couple of minutes left. Let me just talk about it. The original Internet of Things. I do believe the network printer is the original of the Internet of Things. How many of you could show me your policy for mobile devices, desktop devices, and servers? How many of you could show me that policy? Really? Okay, if it wasn't secret, how many of you could say you have a policy for mobiles, laptops, and servers? Okay, much more. Okay, how many of you could show me a policy that includes printers? 3. Okay? I don't want to scare you, but you probably have unmanaged servers running on your network. And the most valuable data in your organization is at some point probably touching these organizations. Doesn't matter whether they're HP devices, doesn't matter if they're Canon, Ricoh, Xerox, Lexmark, whatever. But please go and look at your networked printers and look at how you can make sure that they are included in your policy. At least they're on a separate VLAN, so they're not touching the rest of the network. They're only open so it can talk to, for example, email or DNS or authentication servers. But network printers, as I said, only 5% of the printers that we find are actually secured, even with a default password. So please, if it's the last thing you do, the only thing you do, I'm leaving this, go and have a look at how network printers are secured in your organization, okay? Because there's probably an attack surface that you didn't even realize. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I am around for questions after lunch, but I'd just like to ask you one question. Have you learned or heard something today about network printers and printer security that you didn't know about before today? Yeah? Right. In that case, I'm done. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.